Hi, welcome to High Road. My name's Andrew, and in today's video we're going to learn how to play an open C chord. However, if you just want the quick version, here it is. Alright, in case you want to jump ahead, this video is going to cover the following topics. What notes is a C chord actually made from? How to read it from a chord diagram? How to actually play it? And some advanced techniques to get your C chord to sound as good as it possibly can. So what notes is a C chord actually made from? Well, it's made from the notes C, E and G. On a piano that would be fairly straightforward, but on a guitar the notes tend to be voiced in a unique way. So on guitar, the notes of this C chord are C, E, G, another C, and then another E. So a chord diagram is a picture of your guitar looking from this angle. The vertical lines are the strings and the horizontal lines are the frets. The double line at the top is the nut. And by the way, on guitar we number the fingers 1, 2, 3, 4. If you play piano, that could be confusing because on piano, thumb is 1, but not on guitar. Lastly, at the top of the chord diagram you'll see circles and crosses. Circles indicate open strings, which are supposed to just ring freely. And the crosses are strings that you should not play. You can either mute them or just not hit them. Now when you're interpreting a chord diagram, you've got to learn how to flip that image around in your mind the way you see it when you're playing. So this is what you see on the diagram, but this is what you see when you look down at your guitar. So you have to learn to actually flip that around mentally, and you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. So how do you actually play a C chord? Well, finger 1 goes on fret 1 of the second string. Finger 2 goes on fret 2 of the 4th string, and finger 3 goes on fret 3 of the 5th string. Then you should strum from string 5 to 1. Now in case you're wondering why we're avoiding string 6, that's because string 6 is an E, and although there are already 2 E's in the chord, a C chord sounds best when the lowest note is a C. If you put an E on the bottom, it doesn't quite sound the same. It sounds, it just sounds different. Here's a C chord with a C on the bottom, and here's a C chord with an E on the bottom. Now, if you're a complete beginner, you may not be able to hear much difference between those two, but as your ears develop, you will start to probably develop a preference for having the C on the bottom. It just sounds more pure. It sounds more like a proper C chord. Now let's talk about some advanced techniques that you can use to get your C chord to sound as good as it can. The first and most obvious one is to get your fingers right up on the fingertips and press as close as possible to the frets, like this. Probably the make or break thing with a C chord is to get your first finger to be nice and arched up on its tip so that it's not choking string 1. That's really quite hard. I've seen an interview with Mark Knopfler where he talks about being a beginner himself and having a lot of trouble doing that. You should also aim to keep the other fingers arched and up on their tips and not choking other strings. Some teachers recommend that beginners should actually try and play a C chord a bit like a classical grip, kind of like this, with a nice open shape underneath the neck. I don't really think that's a very realistic way to play. It does work, but you don't really see many people playing C that way. So that's an indication that it's not very realistic. What I would recommend is that you keep the side of your hand touching on the bottom of the neck, but in a way that's out of the way. And I'm not talking about clenching or pressing hard, it's just a place to kind of gently rest the side of your hand against so that you can get this arched shape with your first finger. The added benefit of that is that your thumb on the back will be nice and high, and you can actually use it to wrap over the back of the guitar neck and mute string 6. That way you don't have to be as careful with your right hand when you're strumming. String 6 is taken care of, like that. Now I will admit that wrapping your thumb over the back of the neck could be considered a bit controversial amongst guitar teachers. A lot of people say don't ever do that, don't wrap your thumb over the back of the neck. But if you watch professional guitar players, some of the best players in the world, they all do this. So it's not wrong. It's only wrong if it becomes a bad habit that you don't really have control over. So what I'm suggesting is that if you've got big enough hands, and if wrapping your thumb over the back doesn't cause problems with your other fingers being pulled around, then absolutely use that, because that's the best way to get a clean C chord. If you'd rather not do that, or if it's not really an option for you, there are a couple of other things that you can do. The first one is to use the side of your third finger to mute the bottom E string. The other option is to play a 4-finger C chord, like this. However, that's not really a pure C chord either, because we're just putting a G on the bottom now. So it sounds a little better than an E on the bottom, but it's still not as good as a pure C chord. The last tip I'll give you to getting a good sound out of your C chord is to strum correctly. What I mean by that is to hit all the strings in a balanced, even way so that they all sound clear. For some reason, a lot of beginner guitarists tend to hit the bass strings really heavily, and they'll get this sound. So when you hit all the strings, you get this sound. So to do that, I would recommend using a curved pick motion that tends to come from the wrist. Try to avoid slicing from the elbow in a straight line. And try to aim your strum so that you're hitting strings 5 to 1 nice and accurately. Think of the thumb up here muting string 6 as insurance, but you really do want to just hit the strings that you're aiming for. And that's how you play a C major chord.